Hello? Rescue hooks to rescue, Mayday! Get ahead, West. Fast, Mayday, what's your location? Get the hell out of here, hurry up! We need radio silence, I need water in that 2.5 inch line. 48 inch water in a 2.5 inch line. To the rope, to the rope. 35 in the rear, 35 in the rear.
Welcome to the Emergency Traffic Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Emergency Traffic Podcast, where we talk about firefighter line of duty deaths to learn from these tragic events and potentially prevent them from happening in the future. I'm your host, Paul. Today I'm joined by my co-host, Denis, also my cousin from down east, and we're going to talk about episode number 97, which might come out after 98 this time because I ended up getting 98 recorded first. We're going to Columbia, South Carolina in May of 2023. But before we jump into it, how's Denis doing?
Hi, Paul. I'm fine. Busy with family stuff, as everybody is. So, we're managing because family stuff at my age is not always good family stuff. So,
yeah.
Anyway, it is what it is. So we're getting through. And actually, I'm excited to be here with you today doing this because it's a distraction from what else I might be doing. Like, my lawn needs fertilizing. And, we actually had a hailstorm today. We don't get hail very often here.
Nice.
But it was coming down.
Oh, wow. Wow. Good moisture. Hopefully not too much damage.
About the size of peas. So I wasn't particularly concerned, but it sure made a noise on the sunroom roof. So
I bet.
Yeah, very exciting. So
we need rain here in Western Canada. We are dry, and we haven't received any spring rain yet. We had snow there a couple of weeks ago, but everybody's got fire bans on and restrictions, and we're just kind of waiting for the shoe to drop.
We've been getting torrential rains every couple of days and terrific winds, and it's just
got our water.
Yeah, it's Anyway, it's a nice day today. I got no complaints. Other than the hail.
Yeah, and I got to get my lawn done too. Maybe May long weekend. I'm going camping first. Priorities, right?
Well, they say the best fertilizer is water, but I still have a bag of it I got to put on. So, and that's a lot of walking. It's about 3 hours of walking this way and walking that way. And walking this way. And then when you're all done, you got green strips and you go, okay, how do I do this without getting that?
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's jump into this week's episode. I don't have any current events this week because I already recorded a podcast this week, and so I ran out. Been too busy teaching incident command up in northern Alberta and doing all kinds of stuff, so spring stuff. So we didn't get any current events this episode.
You're working for your Blue Card sponsor, were you?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Maybe True Penny Consulting could become a sponsor of the podcast. Yeah. There you go.
Just for clarity, there are no sponsors.
There are no sponsors. That's right. Let's see. First of all, our podcast, of course, is based on the commentary is based on the information that we have available at the time of recording, the experience of the presenters, ourselves, and it's done to our best of our ability, and listeners should be cautioned. You may not agree with our opinions that we express on this show, but we're just trying to get the message out there so everybody can learn. The information for this episode comes from the NIOSH Firefighter Injury and Fatality Prevention Program report, F 2023-07. In May 26th of 2023, a 25-year-old career firefighter, James Muller, with the Irma South Carolina Fire Department, with approximately 7 years' experience, died following the collapse of a multi-storied lightweight construction apartment building. And we're doing 2 multi-stories this month, so it must be multi-story month, I guess. Yes, Denis.
Irma, it's not crystal clear until quite a ways down into this that Irma was actually a bedroom community on the northeast of Columbia, South Carolina, and it's in the county. So really, this for them is a mutual aid call, and into Columbia itself.
So the fire was in Columbia, but this was the county department responding to assist Columbia, right?
Right.
Excellent. That's good you pointed that out. So The deceased firefighter was a part of the career fire department that had 3 stations and 42 uniformed personnel covering 33 square miles across 2 different counties. The fire department responds to about 5,000 calls for service annually and provides structural and wildland firefighting, technical rescue, swift water rescue, vehicle extrication. Personnel work a 48-hour shift followed by 96 hours off duty. Their training and education and professional development, they maintain their own training division to ensure each member of the fire department receives the necessary instruction and certification to effectively perform their duties and prepare for advancement. The deceased firefighter, Muller, had 7 years of experience in the career fire department. He took part in fire department health and wellness programs and helped with local firefighter training programs throughout the region. He was a certified firefighter 1 and 2, NFPA 1001, a fire emergency services instructor, 1041 level 1, a fire officer, 1021-1, and he had additional certifications in swift water and confined space rescue training. So this fellow sounds like your typical aggressive, very engaged firefighter. And you read his biography, right?
Yeah, but I'm puzzled by his shift. They worked 48 hours on with 96 off.
They do that in
who works
California.
A 48-hour shift? Yeah,
California does a lot of that too. It's mainly due it's too expensive to live in the coastal regions of California, the LA and San Francisco and stuff. So a lot of their firefighters drive in from far away and work their 48-hour shift, then they're off for 3 days or 4 days. Yeah.
Holy mackerel. You get a fire like we got right here, which could easily go on for 12 or 18 hours. And you've got to work another 24 hours after slugging it out.
I'm sure they have plans in place to cover when they get super busy and get rest. Yeah.
There's only 42 uniformed personnel in the department, so covering with what?
Like Alberta here, a lot of 24-hour shifts are becoming very common out here, and I know 48's down south.
Yeah, seems not one I'm familiar with, and like there are probably reasons for doing it, but anyway.
It's usually living conditions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparatus staffing and communications. The Irma Fire Department staffs 2 fire engine companies, 1 ladder company, and 1 battalion chief for each tour. The department provides medical response to supplement the local emergency medical services at the first responder level and participates in automatic aid agreements. Yay, automatic aid, with several surrounding agencies, of which this call was an automatic aid call. Only 2 resources on this incident, Ladder 175 and Engine 171, are from the deceased firefighter's department. Both resources responded as part of automatic aid agreement to an adjacent department. You want to do the rest?
Personal protective equipment. At the time of the incident, the Engine 171 firefighter, Muller, who was the gentleman who lost his life in this, anyway, he was wearing his department-issued structural firefighting turnout gear, which included boots, pants, gloves, coat, hood, helmet, all met the 2018 edition of NFPA 1971, which is the standard for PPE. He was also carrying a Motorola APX 6000 portable radio, pretty sophisticated firefighter radio, so there shouldn't have been issues there, which anyway had been found to be in a working condition upon investigation. Firefighter Muller was wearing a NIOSH-approved SCBA that was certified as to meeting the 2018 edition of NFPA 1981. But approximately 2.5 tons of debris in the incident. This is what was the fatal part of the incident. Anyway, about 2.5 tons of debris during the fire collapsed on top of firefighter Muller. And NIOSH investigators determined that firefighter Muller had initially survived the collapse and then continued to breathe while being pinned under the debris pile for approximately 23 minutes. Wind and road conditions. On May 26, 2023, it was cloudy skies. We're in South Carolina. So the temperature was 70 degrees, which is about 21 C, and the winds were from the north between 10 and 12 miles per hour, so 16 to 19 kph. And the humidity was between 36 and 39% with zero precipitation. So pretty dry for the most part, relatively warm. And the winds 10 to 12, not getting close to being impactful, but the wind was coming in on the Alpha Bravo corner of the building, the way the building was oriented. And the building that was on fire was on the delta side of this complex. The building was divided. The complex divided in two. So it was the delta side that was on fire, and the Bravo side was not principally on fire. There was some fire there, but so the wind would have been coming in on that Alpha Bravo corner. So having the way this building was constructed with access and so forth, the wind might have had some bearing on what went on, although it's not discussed in the report.
So the building in the incident was a multifamily 4-story apartment building. The foundation of the building consisted of concrete footings with concrete masonry unit and wood-framed cripple walls up to the level of the first floor. The wood frame platform construction above this point. The floor level of the first floor was approximately 9 feet above grade on the Charlie side, so it was into a hillside of sorts, right?
No, it was a ravine behind.
Ravine, okay.
Yeah, the ravine went kind of past the Charlie Delta corner on an angle kind of thing.
Yeah. There was a large parking lot located on the Alpha side. The walkways extended from the parking lot to the stairwells. The first floor of the building was located approximately 4 feet below grade level of the parking lot on the Alpha side. A party wall spanning the depth of the building, approximately midline with the width of the structure, separated the building into 2 sections, with 6 apartments on each side of the party wall. The floors of the 6 apartments on the northeast side, Bravo, end of the building were offset approximately 3 feet above the floors of the apartments on the southwest or Delta side of the building. A single 4th-floor loft bedroom was located above the 3rd-floor apartment in the Delta side of the building, immediately adjacent to the party wall. The loft bedroom was surrounded by attic space on 3 sides, and the 4th wall was the exterior Alpha side with 3 windows facing to the northwest towards that parking lot we talked about before. That was actually higher than the building, the parking lot, the bottom of the building, the entrance. The loft bedroom was accessible only via interior staircase from the apartment below. There were no fire stops in the party wall between the apartments.
Yeah, just to be clear, and I wondered this in the beginning, if you were building that building today, that party wall would likely be masonry.
Mm-hmm.
It seems clear from the description in this incident report that that was not the case here. It was a timber constructed, maybe it had double drywall, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
But it was not a fire resistant,
Right.
maybe fire resistant, but not fireproof.
Yeah, not extending past the roof line and all that kind of stuff.
And we'll find out that there is fire extension through that wall at some point.
The building was rectangular in nature and measuring approximately 125 feet or 38 meters wide by 45 feet deep, 13 meters. It was a 4-story structure with 12 apartment units on the 3 floors and a 4th-story loft bedroom, like we talked about already, above the single 3rd-floor apartment. So it was kind of nice. It was kind of cozy. You had that little loft bedroom above your apartment. We've had trouble with these 2-story apartments before, like that Shirley Towers in Manchester. That was quite confusing. It had 4 levels really in one apartment. So the single-floor apartment was visible from the front of the building, that loft bedroom. The front Alpha side of the building faced northwest and contained 2 sets of wood-framed, open-air, half-turned stairs with landings that provided access to the apartments. So the stairways were on the outside of the building, if you will.
Yeah, no external stairs. Yeah.
The topography sloped downward gently from the northwest to the southwest, from the left to right, when you're looking at the front of the building. The topography dropped off steeply from the northwest to the southeast towards the rear of the building, or the Charlie side, from the front. Access to the southeast Charlie side was via the southwest Delta side was difficult due to that downward steep slope. Access via the northeast side Bravo was also difficult due to the remains of the foundation walls of a previous building that created a steep drop-off, and deep mud got trapped between those old foundation walls.
Previous building.
That's kind of curious. Yeah. During the collapse, the 4th-floor loft bedroom fell through the 3rd floor and continued down into the 2nd floor. There was no fire alarm or sprinkler systems installed, but there was working single-point smoke detectors in the buildings. The building was basically a Type 5 lightweight wood structure with an open web parallel cord trusses at each floor level lacking fire stops. This construction allowed for rapid and unrestricted horizontal fire spread between the floors. The roof structure was pitched to accommodate runoff in the building, and it was built of common lightweight metal plate connected trusses with plywood roof decking and asphalt shingles on top. The structure had an open attic with no fire stops, allowing for rapid horizontal fire spread. There were 4 open chimney chases that extended vertically through all floors, as well as the attic that also lacked fire stops, allowing for the rapid and unrestricted vertical spread of fire throughout the structure. It's very similar to the other episode that we're doing this month, which was Dallas, Texas in 2013. Same kind, very similar kind of building, very similar type operation. So it's kind of coincidentally I picked these 2 episodes together, and the buildings are similar, the fire operations are similar. Why are we doing this, people? In the other podcast we talked, Vinny Dunn said for a residential building fire, you can expect 4 firefighters per 100,000 fires, line of duty deaths. For a commercial building like this, you can expect 9 firefighters per 100,000 fires in commercial buildings, because we take residential tactics to them, and they're a big lumber yard.
Yeah, but this is a residential building. But just to be clear about how the platform of this is platform built, right? So the floors were not solid wood joists. The floors were these open web timber trusses, right? So you've got a top chord and a bottom chord. Maybe it's a 2x3, and then you've got some zigzag diagonals of similar material, and they're all held together by these gang nail plates. And so basically it's wide open. I mean, if you had a standard, solid timber truss joist going across, you'd have your floor on the top, you'd have your drywall on the bottom for the ceiling below, and a fire really can only run within that joist space. But here, it's all open. So if you get a fire in that space anywheres, or the fire gets into that space, it will travel wherever wherever the draft takes it. So if you got a bit of wind and you got a door open somewhere, you can create a draft in this space because it's not airtight, and you can pull fire around the building.
I had that long time ago in Dalmeny, Saskatchewan. We had a house fire, and it was really interesting, the investigation, because the fire traveled towards where the air was getting in. It went for the air. It went backwards against the wind to get to that opening and get more air, and then burn and then come back. It was really interesting. The multifamily 4-story apartment building that we're talking about was part of a complex of 16 similarly constructed separate buildings that were built on about a 17-acre or 6.8 hectare site in 1984. So this occurred in 2023. The fire building, number 14, was a dead-end cul-de-sac at the rear of the property. At the time of the fire, only 13 buildings remained in the complex. Three buildings near the fire building, 13, 15, and 16, had all been destroyed in previous fires and had not been rebuilt. Yikes, that's scary. Records indicate that the size-up reports for 2 of the fires from 2013 and 2017 were nearly identical to the size-up report for this fire. Heavy fire on 3 sides involving several floors, alarm assignments were upgraded en route or on arrival, and structural collapse occurred in both previous fires. 2 firefighters were injured in the 2017 fire. Oh my gosh. Okay.
So just to paint this a little better, the address for this address is on a public road, but this is a long private lane that winds in around, and the buildings are built along this lane. So it's well off the public roadway. Investigation. On May 26, 2023, the 911 Communications Center received a 911 call reporting an apartment fire in the back of a multi-building apartment complex. At 16:13 hours, the Communications Center dispatched Engine 6, Engine 13, Ladder 7, Ladder 175, Rescue 1, Battalion 2, and Battalion 1 to the box alarm assignment. So these would be from the Columbia Fire Department. Engine 1 added themselves to the assignment, so they self-dispatched. Engine 6 could see a large column of black smoke and upgraded the box alarm assignment to a working fire. And having done so, that then added on the assignment Engine 2, F6, who's a chief, and Rehab 1. Well, en route, Engine 6 requested the assignment be upgraded to a full second alarm due to the smoke plume and the flames that were visible in the sky. And this is at 16:13 hours, right? So it should have been still daylight. So the second alarm assignment then that had been requested then added Engine 171, which was that automatic aid from Irma, Engine 9, Rescue 2, and Battalion 5. And Ladder 9 added themselves to the assignment, another self-dispatch, after hearing Ladder 7's size-up report. Ladder 7 arrived on scene 6 minutes later and reported a working fire with heavy fire visible on two sides of the building, principally the Alpha and Delta. So the Alpha and Delta parts of the right-hand part of this building. And assumed IC. So Battalion 1 arrived and assumed IC. Fire was showing in the attic on the Bravo side, which is, I guess, near that middle parting wall between the two halves. And with half of the side Alpha, the structure was fully involved at that time. I don't know if fully involved is the right description, but that's in here. It'd be working anyways. Anyway, Engine 6 discovered a 4-inch steamer cap was stuck on the hydrant that was closest to the building and relayed the information to command. Engine 6 established a limited water supply using the 2.5-inch but 65 millimeter hydrant outlet, while Engine 2 and Engine 13 stretched supply lines to a hydrant that was 300 feet away. Then Ladder 7's captain stated 360 degree complete, no change. 7 minutes after dispatch. Then Battalion 1 arrived as the first chief on scene, assigned himself as the Division Alpha supervisor, in other words, out front on the street, and began directing firefighting and rescue efforts. Battalion 2 arrived shortly thereafter and assumed IC, so command was passed. And he assumed his command post on the side Alpha towards the Delta corner, so there's a parking place there, and that's where he parked his command vehicle, and he stayed inside the battalion chief's vehicle, and he acknowledged Ladder 7's 360 report, but didn't conduct his own 360. So before we got talking, or broadcasting, or recording, I should say, Paul and I were chatting about water flow testing that we both independently have done on hydrants, where we didn't use the steamer, we just used the 2.5, usually two side ports, right? And if you do it properly, you can get virtually the same amount of water out of a hydrant as you can get out of a steamer port. And the secret is to go very quickly to the LDH diameter. So you put a gate and put an LDH, you put your gate on the other side, you put your LDH adapter directly on the hydrant and then go directly to LDH. The common way most fire departments hook up, Paul, is different than that. And that's where the problem comes in.
Yeah, for sure. And we did testing in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, because they had various steamer ports, and on flows under 1,000 imperial gallons per minute, so 1,250 U.S. gallons per minute, 5,000 liters a minute, basically. The percentage going from the steamer port to the 2.5-inch port on one side directly to a 100 mil or a 125 mil hose, 4 or 5 inch, was less than 2%. The friction loss is over distance, right? If the distance is short from the wide water body inside the barrel of the hydrant to your hose, if you keep that distance minimal, really the effect on the flow is quite minimal. But it's something you got to train for. If you can't use the steamer port for whatever reason, just slap the hose right on the side of the hydrant and go. We messed around with Siameses and all kinds of stuff, and none of them were better than just going on the one port on the side. And it leaves another port for the other side, so you could do two large diameter hoses off the fire hydrant to an engine.
Yeah. But if your truck is not set up with the proper adapter, like a 2.5 female to source, or you don't know where it is on the truck, or you've never done it before in practice, or you never thought that could happen to you, then you're going to start rolling 50 feet of 2.5 and putting that directly into the engine or doing something, and you're going to get a much worse water supply. So it appears that they didn't do what we were suggesting is a better way. Anyway, property management was on scene, I guess, and contacted Battalion 1 and reported that there was a trapped occupant in the apartment that was directly across the open breezeway, the open air breezeway. So that's basically these verandas that get you to the apartments from the original fire apartment. So the fire apartment's here and The other side of the veranda, there's a door to another apartment. You can't get by because there's flames pouring out the front. Anyway, Engine 6 was able to extinguish enough fire in the open stairwell for crew members to rescue that particular occupant, and they managed to exit the structure. The occupant was then taken to on-scene EMS. Following that, Engine 13 and Ladder 175 were assigned to Division Bravo. So they stretched a 200-foot, 1 3/4 inch, so that's 60 meters of 44 millimeter attack line to the third floor of the Division Bravo. So where heavy fire was observed in the attic space and was spreading horizontally towards side Bravo. So these buildings are connected, and the fire's on the right half of the building, and it's spreading towards the left half because the fire's in the apartment that's right along the party wall. So the party wall is a weak place, and the fire's coming out the front. It's spreading around, but it's also trying to walk across this party wall to the Bravo side. Anyway, just to try to clarify, because it's not crystal clear in here. So Engine 1 arrived on scene, and they split their crew to assist in deploying a second, but this time 300-foot, 100-meter long, 1 3/4, 44 millimeter attack line. And they stretched that from the rear of Engine 6, and they stretched that to the second floor breezeway in the Division Bravo. And they were assigned also to RIC on side Alpha. So they were stretching a line and also assigned to a RIC. So rapid or RIT or whatever you call it on side Alpha. Anyway, 12 minutes after dispatch, that's what was happening then. Anyway, upon arrival, Engine 2 completed a forward lay from another hydrant down the street and established a positive water supply into Engine 6. So I think that's that hydrant that was 300 feet away. Between the approximately 1625 through to 1645 time period, apparatus-mounted deck guns on Engine 6 and an aerial master stream from Ladder 7 were observed flowing water into the apartment building, and they were doing a sweeping motion to introduce water into the attic spaces of the building. You remember they said earlier there was a lot of fire coming out of the front, so they were trying to do an exterior knock on that. Rescue 1 finally arrived and split their crew to assist with conducting primary searches of both divisions. Now, when they're referring to both divisions, they're referring to the left side of the complex, which they're calling the Bravo Division, and the right side of the complex, which they're calling the Delta Division. So you'll see that comes up quite a bit. So these two are essentially separate buildings, although there's a very weak partition wall between them. Anyway, Ladder 7 gave an update from side Charlie indicating fire from 2 floors through the whole building, 2nd floor all the way through the roof. This heavy fire on side Charlie had been visible from several blocks away as the engine were coming in, because the road kind of twists around and you're looking at the back of the building as you're driving in, and prompted Engine 6 to call for a second alarm prior to units arriving on scene. So we'd kind of mentioned this earlier, but this is more detail of how they did that. Ladder 7's initial 360 did not include fire conditions, nor did it include the changes to topography. So the topographic information was not transmitted by radio to crews on the fireground. So if you went in the front thinking you could walk out the back, you might not have been aware that there was significant change in the ground, a ravine, where you walked in below ground level in the front and you were above ground level in the back. So that would have been a challenge.
That's been a significant factor in many line of duty deaths, is that different topography front to rear and not being aware of it as we're talking amongst each other as firefighting on the fireground.
Yeah, and also in the nomenclature, I mean, if you're a firefighter observing this building from the Charlie side and you're a firefighter observing this building from the Alpha side, is the second floor from your perspective?
Exactly.
It may have been more obvious in this case because the first floor was only partially underground. It wasn't completely underground. So anyways.
Battalion 1 reported to the incident commander that Engine 1 was working with Engine 2 on the second floor of Division Bravo at 17 minutes after time of call. Engine 1 had been assigned to RIC. Battalion 1 did not announce that a new RIC assignment, F6. A division chief who served as a shift commander arrived on scene. Let me do that again. Battalion 1 reported to Incident Commander that Engine 1 was working with the Engine 2 on the second floor of Division Bravo at 17 minutes after the time of call. Engine 1 had been assigned to be RIC, but they were now working with Engine 2. And Battalion 1 did not announce a new RIC assignment, so they didn't pick somebody to be RIC. F6, a division chief who served as a shift commander, arrived on scene and checked in with the incident commander. He was not given an incident command system role, nor did he assist the incident commander with command. The incident commander divided the 12-unit apartment building into those two divisions that Denis mentioned before, Division Bravo and Delta, sort of the side of the centerline party wall, if you will, and reassigned Battalion 1 from the Division Alpha supervisor to the Delta supervisor, because he weren't dividing it front to back. He was dividing it in left and right. F6, another division chief, not assigned on the alarm dispatch, arrived on scene and was assigned as the Division Bravo supervisor on the Alpha part of it, on side Alpha. Bravo 1 acknowledged this assignment as the Delta supervisor, but continued to call himself Alpha, and then when asked what units he had with him, he listed off the resources in the Bravo division. So there was confusion over nomenclature and assignments.
So I hate to say anything, but you said F6, it's actually F7.
Right, F7. You're right. Sorry. Let's see. 10 of the 12 apartments were searched and cleared by on-scene resources by approximately 24 minutes after time of call. And that's pretty good. I mean, they were confusing and they had fire burning all over the place. And so they got through it in 24 minutes after time of call. They'd searched 10 of the 12 apartments. Battalion 1 reported that apartments were cleared on the Alpha and Charlie divisions. When the incident commander asked for clarification, Bravo 1 replied, Alpha and Charlie unable to search the second floor and the third floor of the Charlie. So the two unsearched apartments were on the third floor. The Delta half of the building was inaccessible due to the heavy fire damage and a roof collapse. Crews were visible to command operating on the second floor side Delta. Ladder 7 had made access to those second-floor apartments through their balconies and cleared them from the exterior. The fourth-floor loft bedroom space was never searched, nor was it ever recognized as a fourth floor by command or the units on scene. Engine 171, assigned on the second alarm, arrived at the scene approximately 13 minutes after the time of call and reported to the incident commander to deliver their accountability tags. Engine 171 was assigned to stretch an 1 3/4 44 mil attack line from Engine 6 to the third floor of Division Delta. So this is where the fire was the heaviest, right? But Engine 6 could not supply the line with water. Engine 6 was supplying 3 1 3/4 44 mil attack lines already, and its deck gun, and and Ladder 7's aerial master stream, at which time they did not have enough capacity for a fourth attack line. During the stretch, the first arriving companies of Division Delta were beginning to exit the fire department to recycle and swap out SCBA cylinders.
So just to be clear, this is a fairly large building and it has a very significant fire in it. And they have 3 1 3/4 lines and are stretching a 4th 1 3/4 line. And that's the biggest hand line they have on this fire.
Yeah, and that's the problem, is you got way too much fire for 1 3/4. Grab the 65 or the 2.5.
Hence the tendency to gravitate towards the deck gun,
right,
and the ladder pipe, because the 1 3/4 weren't cutting it, so they decided to use major streams.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't do the in-between step where you took a large hand line in. They didn't do that.
With active fire still being reported on the second floor, Battalion 1, still acting as the Division Alpha supervisor, instructed the crew of Engine 171 to assume the original 1 3/4 44 mil attack line from the interior crew from Engine 6 that had gone in, and take over Engine 6's assignment to suppress fire on the second floor Delta side in the apartment of origin. As Engine 6 exited the original fire apartment, there was a local face-to-face communication between Engine 6 and Engine 171 personnel about the floor beginning to sag on the second floor. This critical information was not relayed to either division supervisor or incident command. Engine 171 crews found the floor of the second floor to be solid enough, and they were unsure about what sagging Engine 6 was referring to.
So that 4th 1 3/4 never got stretched, I guess.
No, they just took the
171 went in and took over an existing line.
Yeah. Crews in Division Bravo were active on the first 3 floors, conducting fire attack as well as search and rescue operations. Fire conditions were present in the walls and the floor truss system, prompting crews to open walls and ceilings to prevent fire from further spreading. Crews were also committed to conducting searches of the last 2 apartments on the 3rd floor. Ladder 175 was tasked with accessing those apartments by ladder from the Charlie side of the building. Battalion 1 requested Engine 9 to report to the side Alpha Bravo corner at 25 minutes after time of call. He advised the incident commander that Engine 9 was now Rick. 1 minute later, Incident Command asked F7, one of the district chiefs, if he had Engine 171 with him, and the Delta confirmed that he did. A report was made to command that debris was falling from the 3rd floor on the side Charlie at 28 minutes after time of call. Incident Command acknowledged the report and warned all units on the fireground be mindful of debris falling. The master streams from both Engine 6 and Ladder 7 were redirected towards the Delta end of the building. 2 minutes later, Ladder 7 began flowing water into the Charlie Delta area, and Engine 6 began flowing water into the attic space and the 4th floor loft area.
So that 4th floor loft area is to the left of the Delta section, and Ladder 7's to the right. So they're probably nailing all of the 3rd floor.
Quite a bit of it. Yeah, exactly.
And the roof, right?
Yeah.
So
Engine 1 and Rescue 1 crews breached the wall between the 3rd floor Division Bravo and the 3rd floor of Division Delta, which was directly above the original fire apartment where Engine 171 was working. One member from Engine 1 and Rescue 1 entered the 3rd floor Division Bravo through the wall, crossing into Division Delta with an 1 3/4 44 mil attack line, as water from Engine 6 deck gun began to fall on them. Shortly after they entered the apartment, the floor dropped several feet as a large volume of water poured into the 3rd floor from the loft and continued down to the 2nd floor. The captain from Engine 1 called a mayday at 31 minutes after time of call and requested assistance from the RIC team as both firefighters were attempting to retreat through the wall opening. As they struggled to climb back up the breach into the wall, the 4th floor loft bedroom collapsed through the 3rd floor of Division Delta into the 2nd floor. Approximately 40 seconds after that, the initial mayday was declared. The floor that Engine 6 reported as beginning to sag held the collapse from falling down to the 1st floor. The division assignments at the time of the maydays are listed here. Basically, they had Bravo and Division Delta, right? So we had Division Bravo with Battalion 1 was the supervisor. We had Rescue 1, Engine 2, Engine 13, Engine 9, and Ladder 175, the Bravo division. In the Delta division, we had F7 as the division supervisor. We had Engine 6, Ladder 7, Rescue 2, Ladder 9, Engine 171, and Engine 2.
But that's probably a good description of where they were assigned, but that's not where they were.
Yeah, because they breached the wall, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So Rescue 1, Engine 1 actually had breached the dividing wall between the left-hand set of apartments and the right-hand set of apartments. And apparently the floors in those two sides didn't line up either.
Right.
So there was some offset there also because of the hill they were built on. So they breached through that wall and stepped down into the floor of the next building, just as all the water that the deck gun had put on the roof and upstairs caused the floor to collapse down onto them. So the division between them was not that clear. Some of the Division Bravo crews were actually into Division Delta side of the building. I don't know that they actually knew that. Anyway, the collapses buried the 2 firefighters, one from Engine 1 and the other from Rescue 1, in debris that also landed on top of the Engine 171 crew. So Engine 171 is where our firefighter belongs to. Prior to the collapses, 4 firefighters from Engine 171 were working to extinguish hidden fire in the ceiling and wall spaces of the original fire apartment. The Engine 171 crew was working to exit the original apartment due to safety concerns because there's fire in the floors when the collapses occurred. 2 firefighters from 171 were able to free themselves quickly, and one of them attempted to declare a mayday, but his portable radio was bonking, meaning he couldn't get airtime, which prevented transmission due to heavy radio traffic. So a lot of these digital radios, if the airway isn't clear, it just shouts back at you, sends you back a tone. So that tells me he wasn't using his EAB, his emergency button, because emergency buttons are programmed to take over the airwaves. He was just trying to mic up and say Mayday. Anyway, so it was prevented transmitting. It wasn't getting out. So the radio traffic that was transmitted by Alpha, by the Alpha Division, I guess, was heard by 171 personnel and thought to be for them. So two firefighters from Engine 171 were able to free themselves quickly, and one of them attempted to declare a Mayday, but his portable radio was bonking, preventing transmission because there was heavy traffic, and the radio wouldn't let him transmit. So the radio traffic that was transmitted by Alpha Sector Command, I guess. Who's Alpha?
Yeah, Alpha was the guy that was reassigned to Bravo, but he was still calling himself Alpha.
Reassigned to Delta, but was calling himself
Delta.
Alpha. Yeah. So anyway, the radio traffic that was transmitted by Alpha, who I believe was actually the division commander in Delta Division, was heard by the Engine 171 personnel and thought to be for them. Division Bravo crews were aware that the Engine 171 crew was located directly underneath their operation. I don't know how they would be aware of that, but unaware that the Engine 171 crew had been trapped. They were above them, I guess, because of the way the floors were arranged.
Yeah.
The 171 crew was aware that a crew of firefighters was above them and tried to help them after the floor gave way, but was not aware that those firefighters had been trapped above them after the second collapse. Each division assumed that the radio traffic being heard and communicated to the IC was specific to their respective Mayday operations. So there was actually two Maydays. There was a Mayday on the third floor where the fourth floor bedroom had collapsed, and there was a Mayday on the second floor. So the third floor Mayday was from the Bravo Division firefighters had penetrated into Delta, and the Mayday on the second floor was actual Delta crews, Engine 171. So that's how they were sort of above each other.
Yeah.
Anyway,
now I get it.
It's confusing, but that's what I make of it anyways. Anyway, and the traffic, of course, wasn't clear because why, I don't know. Battalion 1, who was still calling himself Alpha, but was actually in charge of the Delta Division, entered the second floor of Division Bravo. So he's calling himself Alpha. He's in charge of Delta, but he walks over to Bravo and goes in. Anyway, where the RIC was deployed and began working to rescue the trapped firefighters from Engine 1 and Rescue 1. So to do that, you'd have to go up to the floor that they were working on and go through the wall back into the Delta side. Anyway, Battalion 1 reported to command that he did not have accountability of crews in his division, and that he was working to access and rescue the downed firefighter. Engine 1 requested that the exterior master streams from Engine 6 and Ladder 7 be discontinued as crews work to breach the interior walls and find the firefighters from Engine 1 and Rescue 1. So they have crews in the building and they're running master streams onto the building, two of them at the same time. Anyway, the buried firefighter from Engine 1 was able to manually activate his PASS device and his EAB, emergency alert button, on his portable radio. So that would have forced a transmission. The 911 Communications Center then confirmed that the activation of the EAB and notified the IC. One of the three firefighters from 171, who was in Division Delta, that's where they were assigned, was able to get free of the debris and escape through a balcony door to the exterior. So back out one of the main entrances. He met the 171 company officer, who had likewise freed himself from debris and was closer to the apartment doorway, was able also to see the arm of one of the two remaining firefighters from 171 that he didn't have accountability for, and it was pinned under the debris in the original apartment. So there were four members of the crew. There was the officer who was pinned. He managed to extricate. There was another firefighter who was pinned. He managed to extricate. He saw the arm of the third firefighter, so now he knew where that guy was. There's still one missing. At the time of the Mayday, F4, Chief 4, had already joined Battalion 2 in the command vehicle and was assisting with the command workload. So there's two of them sitting there. You've got Battalion 2 in command, probably in the car, and F4, Chief 4, is in next to him, so the two of them together handling the load. After the Mayday was declared, F4 prompted B2, Battalion 2, to take several actions. Numerous crews were self-deployed into the structure, so not under command, just going in, encountering downed firefighters, and began requesting hose lines, tools, and equipment over the radio. Battalion 1 entered the building, remember we said, on the Bravo second floor, so he went all the way over to the other sector, up to the second floor, and began using the Echo Quadrant location. So he identified himself as being in an Echo Quadrant and wanting these hose lines, tools, and equipment resources brought to Echo Quadrant. Anyway, which confused personnel outside who did not know where to take the equipment being requested because nobody knew where Echo Quadrant was. The lack of clarity resulted in all the equipment that was being requested by Battalion 1 going to the second floor of the Delta sector, Delta Division, for use in the rescue efforts for Engine 171, which is where the crews outside saw the collapse occur. So,
wow. Yeah.
So you can see where this would be confusing.
Yeah.
It's confusing to read.
Echo. Where's Echo? Yeah.
Anyway, I just for fun, I did a Google search on Echo Quadrant. The only place I could find it ever showing up was in the report for this incident.
Ah, interesting.
I did find one other where there was an SOP, and it was from another fire department, and it said Alpha will be the front, Bravo will be the left side, Charlie will be the rear, Delta will be the right side, and you might need to establish an Echo Quadrant and in case there's a parking lot somewhere. That's all it said.
Yeah, if something you could make up. Okay.
I think that's what that means.
Battalion 5 approached the window of the command vehicle and spoke to F4. Battalion 5 was requesting additional engines, and at 33 minutes after time of call, during their conversation, Engine 1 reported over the radio the names of the 2 trapped firefighters while from Engine 1 and Rescue 1. This radio traffic was missed by Battalion 2 and F4. Battalion 1 did not hear the radio traffic while he was inside the building working in the area where the 2 were trapped. When asked by command to clarify how many were trapped, B1 did not know. I mean, if you're in charge of the area, what are you doing inside the building trying to get the firefighters? You need to be commanding your teams.
Well, you might ask yourself a question. Why would Battalion 5 go over to the IC and say, I need more engines? Well, what you don't know here, and you find out later if you're paying attention, is that Battalion 5 was actually assigned to be the B Division commander. Now,
right, I remember. Yeah, they had 2 people in B.
Right. So Battalion 5 is assigned to B Division commander. Battalion 1 is assigned to Delta Division. Where is Battalion 1? Delta Division commander? He's over in Battalion or Bravo's area. Yeah. So you can see where this gets confusing because really Battalion 5 is in charge of that quadrant.
Battalion 1 didn't like to be told where to go. Let's see. F1, Chief of Department, arrives on scene and dispatcher advised him that there was a mayday in progress, which F1 acknowledged. F3 approached the window of the command vehicle and spoke to F4. F3 was asked to look outside Charlie and walked away to conduct a 360. F1 approached the window as F3 left to tell command that F7 was not wearing any PPE. As F4 explained the mayday situation to the chief, F1, Battalion 1 reported by radio what crews were working with him. F4 did not hear the radio traffic due to his conversation with F1. And there's a reason why you put yourself in your command vehicle to listen to the radio and command, and there's a reason you put the windows up and you lock the doors. Although it did probably play a role in me losing my job once as a fire chief, because I did that with the director of community services out of fire, because I just arrived on scene and I was getting a transfer of command from my incident commander to me, and this guy wanted to tell me what to do, and I did close the windows and lock the door. About 6-8 months later, I wasn't working there anymore.
So just to be clear, at some point, F7, Chief 7, is actually assigned to be in charge of Delta Division. So somewhere along the line, Battalion 1 is relieved of that job, and Chief 7 is assigned that job. And then the fire chief sees that he's doing that job without his PPE on. And so that's his contribution. He mentions that.
Bravo 1 requested, or Battalion 1 requested a hose line, and Battalion 2 tasked one of the crews that B1 had just reported as working this rescue effort inside the building to bring the hose line. Battalion 5 approached the window again and asked where Battalion 1 was located. Battalion 5 thought that there might be 2 maydays based on what Battalion 1 described and what Battalion 5 knew as happening on the Delta side. Chief 4, F4, could not confirm the number of maydays and assigned Battalion 5 to take over the Division Bravo. F3 returned to the window and gave a report on the fire conditions, issued several tactical orders to Bravo or to Fire Chief 4, F4, and told F4 to get everyone not involved in the mayday out of the area. F4 then asked F3 to manage staging of additional alarm, and F3 refused the assignment. F4 ended up managing the additional alarm resources.
So there appears to be a major reorganization of the fireground going on at this point.
Yes, exactly. That has happened in several large wildfire structural protection departments that I know of as well.
But when you do that, of course, there's such a loss of continuity because you don't have a chief who's been looking after a sector throughout most of the fire. You got Battalion 1 who's in front, he's on the right, he's on the left, and then suddenly he's no longer in charge of one of them. He's just kind of floating.
And the guys don't know what's going on.
Yeah, and other people assigned jobs one after the other. So it can be confusing. I'm sure it was very confusing at the time.
Incident Command attempted to conduct a PAR over the radio, starting with units that were committed to the Mayday. Now able to focus on command again, F4 redirected the PAR effort and told B2 to assign B1 to the Mayday. B2 began requesting PARs from all the units he could physically see from his position. At the same time, units inside were requesting equipment and tools over the radio. A full PAR of fire apparatus crews on the fireground was not completed until approximately 57 minutes after time of call, after 3 firefighters had been rescued and only 1 from Engine 171 remained trapped. This PAR did not account for all personnel on the fireground, as multiple chief officers had self-dispatched and engaged in fireground tasks without notifying command. Rescue efforts were immediate to all 4 firefighters, Engine 1, Rescue 1, and 2 from Engine 171. Neither of the division supervisors or their assigned crews knew about the other division's situation. As crews entered the structure to assist in the rescue, they encountered trapped firefighters and assumed that they had found the only personnel involved in the collapse. The arm of the first trapped Engine 171 firefighter was observed as crews entered the collapse area, and Ladder 9's crew extricated him from the collapse pile. Ladder 9 crew members could also hear and see the second Engine 171 firefighter buried deeper inside the debris and began to utilize hand tools and eventually hydraulic tools to lift and remove debris and to create an access tunnel to him. 55 minutes after time of call, the Division Bravo supervisor informed Incident Command that both firefighters from Engine 1 and Rescue 1 were removed from the structure and the Mayday could be cleared. It was at this point Battalion 1 notified Incident Command that he still had an active, ongoing Mayday of a trapped Engine 171 firefighter on the second floor in Division Delta. Prior to this, Command did not know how many firefighters were trapped or which apparatus they were from.
It appears that Battalion 1 was acting as a RIC supervisor, recovery supervisor. That seems to be the role that he's performing now.
Yeah.
Anyway, Ladder 7, Rescue 2, and Ladder 9 continued to tunnel through the debris, trying to get into the Engine 171 firefighter. All other personnel on the fireground had been accounted for by this time as resources worked to shore up the collapsed area around the remaining Engine 171 firefighter. A firefighter from Ladder 9 was successful in tunneling through the debris on his stomach along the floor to reach the firefighter from 171. When he was in there, he assessed the SCBA of the trapped firefighter and noted the cylinder still had about 980 psi of air, but when he listened, he was unable to hear any inhalation. Couldn't hear the firefighter breathing. The Engine 9 firefighter then placed the 171 firefighter on an air supply from the RIC kit. So he brought the RIC kit in with him, right? The emergency supply of air. And he opened the bypass valve and was able to provide free-flowing air into the facepiece of the 171 firefighter. The Engine 9 firefighter.
Way
Pardon?
to go. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, he took the RIC kit in with him and he assessed him and he added air anyway, because I probably can't reach the guy completely, but let's give him air.
Yeah. These are all good things, because keep in mind, if you got a RIC kit and a mask, you don't need the pack that's on the firefighter. You can
Right. Yep.
You've got what you need, and basically it's as low profile as possible. Anyway, the Ladder 9 firefighter attempted to maneuver the 171 firefighter out, and but the SCBA, the debris and entanglement, because remember, there's 2 floors that collapsed on top of them, made it difficult. The Ladder 9 firefighter then exited the tunnel because he was now low on air, and he was replaced with a firefighter from Engine 1. Engine 1 firefighter was able to cut the SCBA shoulder straps of the 171 firefighter and was able to utilize the DRD drag rescue device that was built into his turnout coat. Again, good. He was able to pull and slide and maneuver the firefighter down the tight tunnel and out of the structure. The 171 firefighter was carried outside to EMS. CPR was started and resuscitative measures were continued as he was quickly transported by EMS, but unfortunately he was pronounced deceased shortly after arriving in the ER.
Yeah, good work by the RIT team, though. It sounds like a very complex rescue operation to tunnel their way in. They took all the right equipment with them. They had air. They were able to hook up to them. They were able to use knives and cut the straps off and use a DRD and drag them out. So that's all good stuff. Unfortunately, likely too little too late because they were trapped. But
and despite the confusion that seems apparent at the command level, it sounds very apparent that the Delta Division firefighters and the Bravo Division firefighters are pretty clear on their Mayday needs and rescue needs, and so they worked to get that done. And pretty much without command organizing that.
The company level worked well.
Yeah, but they did say that these companies entered the structure without direction.
Right.
So they went in basically freelancing, focused
Which
on doing
might have been because of lack of direction from command.
Yeah.
Right. That's what firefighters are going to go do it anyway, whether you tell them to or not. Yeah.
Yeah.
The origin and cause of the fire was listed as accidental in nature, determined by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives National Response Team. The cause was a cooking fire that involved oil used for frying. The cause of death, the postmortem examination of firefighter Muller was determined that the cause of death was mechanical asphyxia due to the structural collapse and entrapment. Very sad. Recommendations. The recommendation 1, ensure initial and ongoing size-ups and risk assessments are conducted throughout the incident. The discussion. Continuous communication supports effective risk assessments. It also allows the incident commander and all personnel operating an incident to be aware of changing conditions to adjust to avoid hazards or mitigate risks. Performing a 360 is an important component of the scene size-up and can be used in the risk assessment. The IAFC Rules of Engagement for Structural Firefighting recommends that the first rule for incident commanders is to rapidly conduct or obtain 360 situational size-up of the incident. Many incidents contain obstacles that prevent viewing of all sides of a structure. Definitely this was one of those incidences because of the grade separation on the ravine. In this incident, the attached garage and fence obstructed the view to side Charlie. When the 360 reconnaissance is achieved, it provides the incident commander personal knowledge of the building layout, construction, access, egress points, fire location, direction of spread, and obstacles or hazards. It allows the incident commander and personnel to know how much air is entering the structure from existing openings and what options are available for future ventilation. A dedicated incident safety officer can perform initial and ongoing size-up throughout the incident. Expectations and authority for the incident safety officer include determining hazardous incident conditions, advising the incident commander to modify control zones or tactics to address corresponding hazards, communicating fire behavior and forecasting fire growth, and estimating building structural collapse hazards. The incident safety officer also has the authority to stop or suspend operations based on imminent threats posed to firefighter safety. The incident safety officer should be separate from the incident commander, operations, or accountability positions so they can focus their responsibilities on the primary objective of continually assessing all on-scene hazards to firefighter and life safety. It is so hard when you're focused on searching the building, putting the fire out and stuff like that, to see the safety issues building. And, you just get so focused on your tasks, and you might not see that we're pouring water on with master streams and we're sending guys in below there, and the fire is traveling throughout the void. So that's why the safety officer is an important, critical role.
Yeah, and you've got large fire, small lines, you're not making progress, so something needs to change.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Recommendation 2, use a personal accountability system to readily identify the location and function of all personnel operating at an incident. And one of my hobby horses. Anyway, as we've talked about this before. Anyway, discussing how it pertains to this incident, a personal accountability system is implemented during an incident to collect and maintain the status and location of the resources working in or potentially working in an immediately dangerous to life or health, IDLH, in other words, environment. All members operating an incident are responsible for understanding and participating in this system. NFPA 1550, the 2024 edition, talks about the specifics of accountability systems. Anyway, a functional personnel accountability system should have the ability to identify members operating in the hazard zone, where members are in the hazard zone, conditions in the hazard zone, actions used in the hazard zone, paths of access and egress in and out of the hazard zone, the RIC and their assignments. So in my world, if you're in the hazard zone, your red tags, you've surrendered your red tag to the guy who's doing entry control, and in this fire, you probably would want 2 entry controls, one for the Bravo side of the structure of the complex and one for the Delta side. And you might even have additional people if you were doing entry on the Charlie side for whatever reason. But we don't know that was done. We know that some people had tags on their trucks because it talks about them. They turned them into the IC. But the IC sitting in his command car is not doing entry control. He can't. He's just not right there to grab the tags at the doorway. Different methods and tools are also available for resource accountability, including tactical worksheets, command boards, apparatus riding lists, company responding boards, CARs, or sometimes they're called, electronic barcoding systems, accountability tags, or keys. At that level, that would be what I know as a green tag, where you're on scene and you're tagging in with usually near the IC with where the tactical worksheet is, and you're grossly assigned, like you're on deck, you're RIC, you're in whatever division you're assigned to. So, but you're not at that time when you're tagged in, you're not necessarily in an IDLH area. So we don't know what level of accountability was going on here because they don't talk about it. But it does seem clear that there was no entry control. That seems pretty clear.
Yep, that's a good point.
And that's not the first time we've had this conversation.
Unfortunately, on the Line of Duty podcast, it's a common theme. Recommendation number 3, ensure that incident commanders immediately establish divisions, groups with a supervisor to communicate conditions and provide accountability. There's where you dial that accountability down to who's working in your area. Within a division or group, firefighters advise their supervisor of work progress and provide accountability for crew members engaging in task-level activities. The incident commander should assign divisions or groups to a supervisor early. This is especially important when firefighters are operating from tactical positions that the incident commander has little or no direct control over, i.e. out of sight. All requests for additional resources or assistance with a division or group are directed to the supervisor, who's responsible for communicating that to the incident command. Supervisors can provide ongoing conditions, actions, needs, can reports to the IC on all 4 sides and the interior of an incident, which may influence tactics and strategy. This is standard incident command system training that I do all the time. But it's so important to establish those division and group supervisors, and that way you have a better accountability, which is one of the 14 principles of incident command, is accountability. Division supervisors can also assist in providing personnel accountability reports when requested by the incident commander, safety officer, or operations. How many guys do I have left? You want to know, right? So you're the operations section chief. You need to know what more resources you have. When the incident commander does not establish divisions or groups with a supervisor, firefighters should follow established fireground operations reporting procedures while operating in the incident and hazard zone.
Now, they commented that there was a lot of radio traffic. So I'm not sure what this entailed. It might have been crew-to-crew traffic. But this need to communicate with supervisors and need for the supervisors, commanders, local area commanders, division commanders to talk to the IC. This is something that really takes a lot of discipline, training, and practice to happen. Because if you just let firefighters do their thing, they won't talk to you as often and give you updates as you might like to have. You need to possibly prompt them, engine one, what's going on? You'd have to ask questions like that and prompt them until you get to the point where you've got a disciplined fireground and engine one knows they have to talk to you on a regular basis. And if they don't, then you remind them.
Yep.
SOPs.
Yep. And practice.
Training. Recommendation 4, train personnel in modern fire dynamics and develop fireground strategies based on a thorough risk-benefit analysis that accounts for building types, their characteristics, associated risks, and available on-scene resources. We talked a little bit about the construction, but now we're going to talk about that during this incident, resources were dedicated to the hazard zone for rescue when an assessment of conditions showed already rapid deterioration and extreme fire conditions. They were almost extreme on arrival. Specifically, first arriving fire companies encountered a well-developed fire in a second-floor apartment of 4 stories, as it turned out, with both vertical and horizontal fire spread, including hidden void spaces through the floors, through the walls, and with an exterior stairway. These stairways were covered also, so they were at risk of being, and timber at risk of being seriously compromised. Upon arrival, the apartment building was occupied with 12 apartments, 6 per side, and it was quickly discovered that persons were trapped inside the building. An offensive fire attack was initiated in conjunction with a successful search and rescue efforts, that one occupant of the one apartment. It can be difficult for ICs to predict the intensity of a building being impacted by active fire. You got to look all around it. You got to have reports. You've got to check it out, right? Fire departments should consider the amount of time a fire has been burning as a collapse predictor. In other words, like a rule of thumb, right? Research has shown that lightweight engineered lumber trusses and joists can lose their structural integrity and be prone to collapse within 5 minutes of being exposed to open flame. These experiments including metal plate connected wood parallel cord trusses, like was in this case. This was the 4th fire in a similar building on this exact street. You would think that they had some idea of how those buildings were built and how they burn.
But the problem is they had reports of trapped victims. And so they're going to move heaven and earth to try to get to the victims and confirm they're all out. And so that's, that often gets in the way, which is where you need the strong command presence of command and the command team to manage it, because the firefighters are going to hurt themselves trying to get this done. We're risk takers, right? We manage risk every day and we take risks to try to help others. And sometimes it bites us.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if they were doing primaries or they were doing fire suppression, or you do fire suppression as you're doing your primaries because that controls the situation, or whether this was controllable even from the get-go.
Yeah, it probably wasn't, by the sounds of the fire conditions and the type of building construction and a bit of wind and the topography. This is a challenging call.
Yeah. Also, let's not forget that these buildings were over 40 feet deep.
Yep.
So that's going back from the alpha side. So that's what's going on in the back half of that building is not readily visible from the alpha side.
and different departments, although they may work together frequently, it still provides a dynamic sometimes, just from familiarity of how you do stuff. Recommendation 5, safety officers with training on structural collapse and incorporate these principles into fireground incident management. The discussion here is that there was no dedicated incident safety officer during the incident. The SOPs of the fire department tasked division supervisors with performing accountability, tactics, safety for individual divisions. But the incident safety officer can provide a fire department with a higher level of expertise to perform the necessary incident scene functions and assist the incident commander with fireground safety. Some ICs believe that any fire officer should be able to fill the ISO function at any time under circumstance, and therefore believe that their agency does not need a pre-designated incident safety officer. Whether the ISO position is pre-designated or filled by a fire officer, fire departments must ensure that ISOs are trained in how to assist the incident commander and other officers on the fireground operation. Dodson 2021 and Sullivan 2012, NIOSH 2013, they all point out that safety officers should be trained. And most of the safety officers I know that are dedicated safety officers, they are building and firefighting nerds. I mean, they study this. They know what can happen. They know the history. They can make prognosis. And often incident command has trouble making prognosis because incident command is also worrying about how many resources and worrying about water and worrying about all the other stuff. Whereas the incident safety officer can really focus on what is the building going to do.
Yeah, I don't think your average fire officer has necessarily the skill set to be a safety officer. I really don't believe that's true. If that was the case, you wouldn't need safety officers because all your fire officers wouldn't get into trouble.
But that's why NFPA says you must have a safety officer.
Yeah, it's just not the way it is.
And the funny thing here in Alberta and Saskatchewan, we do not have certified safety officer training. Neither province, which are the accrediting body for IFSAC Pro Board, offers a certificate in incident safety officer. I took mine through JIBC, through the province of British Columbia. We brought instructors in. I've been bugging the fire school here as I'd love to teach it. I teach safety officer for incident command, but there's no way to properly teach safety officer with certification right now in large part of Western Canada.
Yeah, I did mine back in the late 70s, and a thing or two might have changed.
Wow, you're old.
Oh. Here we go.
Late 70s. I was still in high school.
Yeah. Okay, good. Thank you. Recommendation 6, ensure interior and exterior operations such as water application are not conflicting. Okay, discussion. During this incident, firefighters operated in the structure while on-scene apparatus applied water onto the structure from master streams. Remember? Engine 6 and ladder 7. Division Bravo requested that exterior streams be stopped after the Mayday declaration due to hot water runoff causing minor burns. So it's a lot of fire.
That's a lot of fire if your master streams are warm.
Conflicting interior and exterior operations are a significant safety concern on the fire ground. Exterior water applications such as from master streams, deck guns, ladder pipes, whatever, should never be used directly on a building where firefighters are operating inside. This is not news. These devices deliver high volumes of water flow, can compromise the structural stability of the building, not to mention knock down walls, throw debris around, knock over firefighters, move the fire, cause it, especially if you're using them fog things. Push the fire around, ventilate. There's so many reasons you don't want to do that any more than you want guys walking in opposite doors of a room and firing hose streams at each other. This is just way worse.
I've been knocked down by a master stream.
I don't doubt that you have.
I have, yeah. My chief thought it would be funny to hit me when I was with the deck gun from the truck. I was out on a monitor. We were doing training practice.
Yeah,
he nailed me, and he didn't. I don't think he expected it to knock me back end over tea kettle all the way down. I curled up in a ball and rolled. Yeah,
yeah. So anyway, it's kind of a very well-known tenant, I would have thought. Anyways,
Recommendation number 7, educate personnel the use of radio communication processes for sharing critical information on scene. During this incident, critical information about the integrity of the structure was shared by firefighters engaged in operations, but not with operations or incident command for fireground awareness. As the first arriving companies began to exit the original fire apartment, they were face-to-face communications about the floor beginning to sag on the second floor of the Delta Division. This critical information was not relayed to either the division supervisor or the incident commander. Safety hazards, such as structural issues in this incident, may dictate an immediate change in strategy and tactics to preserve the life and safety of the firefighters. Consequently, firefighters on scene should immediately communicate any safety hazards through the chain of command so that they can be brought to the attention of those working in the hazard zone, safety officer, incident command, and operations.
I think it might have been a little muddled as who was in charge, and so that might have been a factor here.
Sure. Yeah.
So it might not have been dead clear. Recommendation 8. No, I'm sorry, 7? 7.
8. I did 7.
Okay. Recommendation 8. Provide a Mayday tactical worksheet for ICs in the event of a Mayday. This is a good recommendation. When a Mayday is transmitted, ICs have a very narrow window of opportunity to locate the lost, trapped, or injured members. The IC will need to restructure the strategy and tactics to include a priority rescue. This is right out of NFPA 1550, which everybody should have read and understood. A Mayday tactical worksheet serves as a guide and a tailored checklist for any Mayday. It's steps. Don't forget to do these things. It can provide reminders to prompt the firefighters to activate their EAB, for instance. So if you're in trouble, activate your EAB for priority radio transmissions. Remember the firefighter was transmitting and he was just getting a boink because he couldn't get in because his radio was trying to get into a busy channel. The EAB overrides that. But if you don't do it, then it won't. And other important items such as pass activation helps you to be found. Providing your air status and location information, that's important. The worksheet can be easily located on the back of a tactical worksheet. You got a tactical worksheet, you're working on it, you flip it over, there's a Mayday tactical worksheet on the back. That's pretty standard, I thought, in most departments now. Certainly is a good idea, it works well. Anyway, it can be easily located on the back of the tactical worksheet to assist ICs, ensuring the necessary steps are taken to clear the Mayday as quickly and safely as possible. A Mayday is too important to operate from memory. Trust me, when you got a Mayday, your brain stops working, it seems, and risk missing a vital step that could jeopardize the outcome of the rescue of a firefighter who is missing, trapped, or injured. You got to do it right. You don't have much time. Some departments have adopted the term LUNAR, L-U-N-A-R, which stands for location. Give your location. Unit assigned, engine 171 in this case. What your name is, Muller. Assistance needed, I'm trapped. Resources needed. So that's what LUNAR stands for. In other words, to gain the additional information that's necessary in identifying a firefighter who's in trouble and in need of assistance. One of the big problems with this is firefighters knowing where they are. Situational awareness and where location. We see this over and over again. A guy thinks he's in the Alpha Bravo corner and he's not. He's somewhere else. And when we talked to Lionel about the Winnipeg incident, that was one of the things. They really didn't know where they were until they found a window and stuck their head out. Anyway, the IC, so that's one of the challenges. The IC, the division group supervisors, company officers, and firefighters need to understand the seriousness of the situation. It's a Mayday. It's important to have the available resources on scene. You got to have your RIC teams and to have a plan established prior to the Mayday. You don't make it up on the day you have your Mayday. And Brunacini talked about this a lot, and it's in NFPA 1550 also.
Exactly. You got to have a plan just in case. That's the whole thing. That's why you're there, just in case something goes wrong.
Yeah, we talk on this podcast about doing things so you don't, or not doing things, or whichever it is, so you don't get to a Mayday. But once you do get to a Mayday, do it right.
Yeah, for sure. Recommendation, which is the whole purpose of the command system, is to deal with an emergency occurring. That's why you want to have enough depth in your command system. You want to have some spare, some extra room. So you have some officers and some teams to respond when something goes wrong, because sometimes it does.
Yeah. And Columbia is a big department, a big city department. They have a lot of resources. And, to be able to assign a company strictly assigned on the alarm, working fire alarm, and is strictly as to be your RIC team or whatever to look after Maydays shouldn't be beyond the realm of possibility.
Yeah. BC trains this for everybody who takes their fire officer level 1 and 2 or 2 and 3 emergency scene command, and you have to establish RIT within a few minutes. You have to ladder to the second floor, all that kind of stuff. 10 minutes before you send another crew in, you have to have RIT. So it's always there. Blue card, first thing, it's one of the jobs. On deck, you're also RIT. Let's see. Recommendation 9, develop and implement an SOP, SOG on the deployment and use of RICs. So the discussion, effective RIC operations are dependent on proactive efforts. Upon arrival, the RIC officer, accompanied by a member of the RIC, will get a report from command and then should perform a scene size up of the incident while remaining RIC members assemble the equipment. During a 360-degree size up, the RIC officer and members should look for ways in and out of the structure, including windows, fire escapes, construction features. The RIC officer should note the feasibility for placement of ground ladders for rescue or escape purposes. The RIC officer should also be responsible for setting up and securing a suitable secondary egress for interior crews. After the above grounds tasks are completed, the RIC equipment is put in place, and the RIC officer should inform the command that 360 is complete. The RIC is ready to intervene if necessary. The entire RIC should stay in the area immediately accessible to the building for rapid deployment and maintain radio contact with command. The RIC officer should brief all the RIC members with the results of the incident scene survey, and the RIC officer and members will coordinate with the incident commander to formulate a rescue plan contingencies and continue to monitor radio and fireground conditions. RIT protection is not a passive assignment. It is a process of ongoing information gathering and diligent scene monitoring until the unit is released by the IC. This comes from NIOSH, NFPA, and the Toledo Fire and Rescue Department in 2012. All recommendations from them.
Yeah, one thing about RIC, though, and we've had this come up a couple times in past incidences, and specifically like securing secondary egress or entrance ways into a building. And we've seen in some of these reports that RIC has done this or other crews have done this who are trying to get the building ready for an emergency. And they've gone and forced a door, what they call softening it up. And that's not a bad thing, softening up the door. Where they make the error is in opening the door or opening the area up such that that now becomes a point where you can establish a flow path through the building and change the fire conditions internally. So softening up is not opening up. And RIC SOPs must understand that if you're going to establish a second means of getting in or a second egress in the building, that you don't open up, you may soften up. There's a difference. So you may put a ladder up to a back window, and it's ready for a firefighter egress, but you don't go up and clean out the window automatically, because that changes the fire conditions and could get somebody killed. It has. We've seen it.
Yep.
Yeah. Recommendation 11, develop a pre-incident plan for high-risk occupancies that is supported by national standards. So NFPA 1660, which is the standard for emergency, continuity, crisis management, preparedness, response, and recovery. In other words, your emergency response standard. In the Appendix A, states that a pre-incident plan is one of the most valuable tools available for aiding responding members in effectively controlling an emergency. Time after time, we've discussed in this podcast that the crews really didn't know anything about the building that they were fighting a fire in. And that's what they're talking about here. The pre-incident plan is defined as a document developed by gathering general and detailed data that is used by responding members in effectively managing emergencies for the protection of the occupants, the participants, responding members, property, and the environment. Because many fire departments are unable to pre-plan all the structures within the jurisdiction, you just can't. Departments may preferentially optimize the prioritization of plans for structures that have elevated or unusual fire hazards and life safety considerations. You got buildings, you drive by them and you go, boy, I hope we don't have a fire there. Boy, if you say that,
That's
get
the
out and
ones.
pre-plan it.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
if you don't want a fire there, you know what's going to happen, baby.
They've lost 3 buildings in this
Yeah.
apartment complex in the
Yeah.
past however many years.
Yeah.
It should be pre-planned.
Yeah. So that wasn't apparently enough of a trigger.
No. Number 12, consider maintaining resources and protocols to address occupational exposures to potentially traumatic events for your members. So this is just a FYI that we need to prepare, especially as chief officers and leaders in the fire service. Following the death notification of the Engine 171 firefighter, the department in the incident requested assistance from surrounding fire departments, and this was done to provide station coverage for the incident fire department to allow firefighters to be off duty for the next 8 days. The state fire mental health crisis team was activated to provide free voluntary sessions with licensed behavioral health specialists to the members of the incident fire department and their families. This is kudos to them. They did a good job on this. Tragic that it happens, but to be ready and be able to activate resources for this. Command staff utilize telephone calls, emails, text threads, and meetings with members and their spouses to ensure knowledge of ease and access to the resources for their members and families. Although the resources were voluntary at first, the fire department required every member to check in with a mental health professional at least once prior to returning to duty. Upon return to duty, members were encouraged to look out for each other, access mental health services whenever needed, and report concerns about fellow firefighters through the chain of command. So that's very important. We need to do that. We need to do more of that. Didn't have a lot of that when I was a young firefighter. Fortunately, I never experienced a serious line of duty accident or injury on the job when I was involved, but it can happen.
Yeah, it sounds like management had possibly pre-decided that how they were going to do this, and or at least had access to mental health resources and understood what to do, or were well advised, whichever it was. Yeah, that's we don't see much of that. Recommendation 13: ensure the water agency or the authority responsible for municipal water supply shares information on hydrant testing and flow capabilities with the local fire department. Remember, there was a hydrant that wasn't working in this particular. Yep. So a mutual aid fire department assumes responsibility for hydrants. Now, Paul, the way this reads, is this what was the case?
Yeah, I mean, you and I have the same information.
But read the language. A mutual aid fire department assumes responsibility for fire hydrant testing and providing monthly hydrant status reports on behalf of the jurisdiction's water department. At the time of the incident, status reports did not show that the affected hydrant was out of service. Was anybody checking? Nor did they indicate that the last date that the hydrant was serviced. You would expect it had been serviced after the last fire. Usual practice is that's the first thing they do after firefighters try to break a hydrant. They go and service
we run into a lot of problems with private hydrants.
Oh, yeah.
So if it's on private property, it may not be a municipal hydrant. It might be private.
That would be my suggestion here.
And then the only way to track that is during annual fire inspections. We used to ask for their private hydrant maintenance records. And one of the big utilities. Yeah, one of the big utilities in Alberta here, EPCOR, they sticker the hydrant every time they do a test, and I mean, so but not everybody is doing that because it's my hydrant, and yeah.
Good point. We don't know. This could very well have been a private hydrant, right. Hooked to the public mains eventually.
Yeah.
But this access road was a quarter mile long, probably longer, right?
Right.
And so we don't know. Anyway, regular testing of hydrants, at least on an annual basis, and accurate record keeping could have made a difference at this incident. The hydrant could have been in serviceable condition or identified to responding units as unserviceable, triggering an alternate plan sooner in the event. Now, how would that have happened? You'd have known it was a damaged or unserviceable hydrant, and that would have been reported to fire dispatch. That would have been put into the CAD system, and when the address came up with that as located as the nearest hydrant, that would have popped up and, hey, incoming hydrant in front of blah, blah, out of service, alternate hydrant, location.
I
So
want
if
to
your cat,
join. I'm
if your
joining
cat's
your.
not doing that, you got the wrong kind of cat.
I'm joining your fantasy fire department.
Hey, we used to do that. What are you talking about?
There you go. Way to go. Okay, we have another article here. This is from Fire Rescue One's webpage. It's an article by Mr. Ted Clifford of The State, which I believe is a local newspaper. Columbia, South Carolina. James Muller was still in high school when he knew he wanted to be a firefighter. At 25 years old, married, father to a young son, serving with the Irma Fire District. May 26, as we just described, he was killed while assisting Columbia-Richland Fire Dept in battling an apartment fire at Tropical Ridge Apartments near the Riverbank Zoo in Columbia, South Carolina. While fighting the fire, it's at its source inside the second floor kitchen. Mueller and 3 other Irma firefighters were buried by debris, and the 2 floors above them collapsed on top of them. According to a lawsuit followed by Mueller's widow, the collapse was caused when the Columbia Fire Department had turned their powerful deck guns on the roof, unleashing enormous amounts of water on the fire-weakened building. Once trapped, Mueller's Mayday call was lost amidst busy radio traffic and simple misunderstandings. Mr. Mueller died of mechanical asphyxiation after remaining trapped under debris for at least 45 minutes, according to the lawsuit. Lawsuit was filed April 23rd by Emma Mueller against the City of Columbia and Richland, alleges that Mueller's death was caused by inadequate training, miscommunications between personnel, and a failure to maintain clear channels of communication during the fire. The attorney, Brian Barnwell of Columbia law firm Rickard and Protopas LLC, told the state that they didn't wish to comment on the lawsuit. The legal action comes roughly 2 weeks after the NIOSH released a report outlining how critical miscommunications at the scene of the fire led to Mueller's death, which we just read to you. Or most paraphrased to you anyway. The fatal blaze started by a grease fire inside of a kitchen located on the back second floor apartment. Mueller and other firefighters, Irma Fire Protection District, were responding to the 2-alarm fire as part of automatic aid. While the fire was in Columbia Fire Department's jurisdiction, the agreement allows the closest fire department to respond to an emergency, which is great. Closest next unit. At Tropical Ridge, the Columbia Fire Department assumed command over the scene because the fire was in their jurisdiction. As a result, they were responsible for organizing the emergency response efforts and maintaining safety, according to the lawsuit. Representatives of Columbia-Richland Fire Department and the City of Columbia said they were unable to comment pending litigation. Richland County didn't immediately respond to the state's information for comment. The Irma Fire District was not named as a defendant in the lawsuit and similarly declined to comment. The California Occupational Health and Safety Administration also issued a number of citations and fines totaling $3,600 against both the Irma Fire District and the Columbia-Richland Fire Department. Irma Fire is contesting the fines.
So another line of duty death and another lawsuit.
Yep.
And I think you're going to need to consider these to be the norm. The more lawsuits there are after line of duty deaths, the more likely there is that the next line of duty death is going to trigger a lawsuit.
Yeah, and there was the one, I can't remember where it was now. I have the report somewhere that they just did a webinar about it last week, but about 4 months ago, a lawsuit by victims' families to the city, and they were awarded $31 million in losses, and the jury only took 2 hours to come to their decision. So it was pretty clear that they felt that the fire department didn't manage the emergency correctly.
Right. And so the way to drive change in your fire department is not to attract major lawsuits. The way to drive change is to recognize there's issues because you've seen it with other people and address those issues. And I guess that's why we're having this conversation.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was teaching a class this week and I brought that lawsuit up going, municipalities, we need to be aware of these problems and we need to make sure our people are training. We hear a lot of people complain about command training is too expensive, blue card or effective command or whatever. It's too expensive to train our officers. And no, and I remember Brunacini saying years ago, if you think training's expensive, you ought to try losing a firefighter at a fire one time and see how expensive that is, right? We need to train our people. And I don't know how we do it.
Yeah, fire department used to be looked upon as the organization that did its best under dangerous circumstances and shit happens. but I don't think that's being accepted anymore, particularly with the newer generations where they don't want to be part of a failure of the fire department. It's not all the heroic side that matters anymore. It's becoming more of a job that you expect to survive.
Of course,
And
firefighting is so much more complex now.
very much so.
Right. Look at the 4 Sacramento firefighters that are getting treated for inhalation of heavy metals from an electric vehicle fire because they didn't wear their SCBAs in post-fire cleanup.
Yeah, the fire was out. What could happen?
It was just white smoke. I mean, it looked very incongruous.
Yeah. They were wrong. Anyway, I think I already said that, this is another episode where, it could happen anywhere. It's a fire in a building that was a dangerous building to be in. It was, they knew that, or they should have known that, because there'd been multiple serious fires in that location before. But there was a report of persons trapped. One person was rescued. The firefighters put a major effort into to trying to get a control of the fire. There were some mistakes made. They didn't talk in here about using lines that were probably too small for the fire, because they just went from tiny lines to beating the guys up with big master streams. But so there were other errors, and I know you could easily identify them if you're an experienced firefighter that we didn't talk about. But if you're talking about those types of things, that's a good thing. You need to talk about them because they're all learning points, and hopefully you don't experience an outcome like this, because it can't be much fun. Take care.
Thanks, everybody, for listening to another episode of the Emergency Traffic Podcast. We appreciate your interest and hope you continue to find them interesting and informative. Give us a star, a like, a thumbs up on the app that you use, or subscribe. These mean a lot to us because they help the algorithms for other people to learn about our little podcast. You can follow us on our Facebook page, the Emergency Traffic Podcast, and you can email us at theemergencytrafficpodcast@gmail.com. Please, let's be safe out there.